What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Retro Encounter. As always, I am Josh Curry. With me is Mike Sollosi.
Hello, everybody. I'm really excited for this time.
I can't even begin to fathom why you'd be so excited. Hopefully, just as
Maybe
excited.
because we're gonna talk about one of the games that I played the most. Period. So yeah, let's get on with it. Who else is here?
Well, I feel bad now. Sorry, Chris. With us, Chris Gebauer.
Fine,
we were leading into a great introduction, and I was like, all right.
No. I'm just gonna be super rude.
I was so ready. I was so ready. I was on point. I was gonna do a whole.
No. Give me your best record right now. Come on, I want it.
So, Mike loves interrupting people normally, and now he's stepped up from just interrupting the conversation of other people to interrupting their intros as well.
Oh, guys, I'm having flashbacks to South Park. Heck, it's fun.
Oh man.
There already. Yay! It's Diablo III, everybody. We're gonna have some fun.
Yeah.
Stay a while. Listen to me yammer about this game for 2 hours.
Yeah. So fully expect there's like an 82% chance that Mike is the only one that talks the entire podcast.
Acceptable.
50-50 chance I fall asleep while we're recording this because Mike talks about Diablo 3 for the 100th time with me. But I don't know, I think it'll be fun. So Diablo 3's been out for a while, and it's one of those few games that things have actually changed. When it came out, the early days of Diablo 3 are decently different. I think that's a nice way to put it.
Notoriously rough launch.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of talk about the early days a little bit, and then we'll move into the first 3 acts of the game. And then obviously we'll wrap up. Next podcast, we'll wrap up the game and then cover all the extra content that has been released. So that's kind of the plan.
Yeah, and maybe discuss the future of Diablo 3 a little bit, because I think the future of D3 is a little uncertain long term, even though we know some 2017 stuff. Diablo 3.
It's like
D3.
It's so pretentious.
Why do you think it's like we're talking about a 3-sided dice? Like
I don't know.
We're not playing.
Diablo's not that hard of a word to say. Like, we don't need to.
Right.
I feel like we don't need to.
We could be talking about Disgaea 3. Or,
I was saying more and more importantly, I'm just trying to conjure up the Mighty Ducks just a
or
little
Destiny
bit.
3. Oh yeah.
Quack.
Is D3 the one where they're
Quack.
in college?
Quack.
No, that's D2.
Quack.
Oh no, it is D3 because D2
D3.
they
Yeah,
go
D2 is the
they
World
go
Cup.
win the world championship, and then
And
go
I'm
to college
still-
and can't do a good job. Like, what's the deal with that?
I still think it's so stupid. They win the world championship against Iceland instead of Canada or Russia.
Right.
Russia would have been the easiest villain ever.
They
Instead
didn't
they go with
they didn't
Iceland.
even do
I did it.
Sweden. Like, it would at least make more
We're
sense
not
at
even
least if it was
talking about the
Sweden.
game.
Like,
I win.
Like Russia, Poland, Canada would have made more sense as a villain than Iceland. And like the population of Iceland is like less than half of New York City, right? I mean, come
less
on,
than
guys.
half then?
Well, less than a borough.
Yeah,
Probably,
you understand that like Iceland is like 300,000 people and 200,000 of them live in Reykjavik.
Yeah, Reykjavik.
And then there's a bunch of like
250, yeah.
glaciation and volcanism. And man, why is Iceland unfairly painted as semi-Nazi in that movie? That's stupid.
More importantly,
Yeah.
I forgot
Oh right.
about that. Oh,
knuckle
my God.
pucks are not a real thing.
Of course.
They just
Someone
look
that
really
grew up-
cool in the movie.
Someone
Watch-
that grew up playing hockey, like, literally not a thing.
Yeah, you put it on its side and you took a shot and you were like, oh, I'm not going to make the team if I keep doing this.
Now
Probably
they had
stop.
to have someone with some kind of trick special ability, like a secret pitch in a baseball
I was
movie,
going to say,
which
unfortunately,
makes way less sense in hockey.
Same thing.
like I created a splitter slurve. It's like you can't do that in hockey. I'm sorry.
Climb
It
V,
doesn't work that way.
most likely going to be offsides.
And not only offsides, not going to have a defenseman hanging back, kind of screwed for a breakaway. Don't worry about it.
And also,
Hockey.
like a guy who does a low hit in the first second of the match gets thrown out of the whole game. But a guy who literally takes his stick, holds it over his head like an axe, and like wrecks a guy's elbow just gets 2 minutes.
Yeah, that seems fair.
I
That checks out to me.
Really? Okay.
Out of everything we talked about, that one makes the most sense.
That one makes the most sense of the ones we've mentioned. All right. Hockey is not a sport I follow as closely as basketball or football, so I'll take your word on this one.
Yeah, so that's why we're not going to call it D3. We're
Yeah,
gonna call
exactly.
it Diablo
So-
3.
Okay, we're calling
Or
it
Diablo.
We're gonna say Diablo or Diablo 3, so we don't confuse it with the Mighty Ducks. Got it.
Diablo 3.
That's really honestly what I was worried about from the beginning. I'm happy Chris was able to point it out. Uh, yeah.
You're welcome.
So
Nothing less than we-
unlike most episodes, all three of us had already played and beaten the game before we covered this one,
Anytime.
so no new
Oh, yeah.
opinions. But was everybody actually playing Diablo when it first came out? Did everybody get to experience the auction house?
I stood in a line for the midnight release. It's the last game I did that for, was Diablo 3. It was a few months before I got out of college. And that first night couldn't even get online because the servers were so flooded.
Well, that's
So I
how
had to wait 24 hours to even
all
play.
Blizzard games are.
Yeah, but that was the first one that it was bad.
Yeah.
Like StarCraft, I didn't have problems. StarCraft 2, I didn't have major problems like that. It was impossible to even play the game for 24 hours because you had to be online. And there was just no way to set itself up. It was awful. I was so upset that first week. I had so many issues.
No, I was not as on the ball as you guys. I didn't have a very good computer when it came out. I was already graduated from college, but I was not very flush with money at the time, and I was saving up to build one. And by the time I built a desktop, I had heard a lot of crap about parts of the game, including the auction house, that made it sound like not the game I wanted. And then, right there you have Torchlight and Torchlight 2 sating my thirst for more Diablo 2. So even though I followed the release of Diablo 3 really closely and just hung on to every single main character reveal, I did not play it when it first came out. But when I heard so many positive things about Reaper of Souls and Loot 2.0, which I'm sure we're going to talk about,
coolest name too, right?
It was a great name. A great name for it. I jumped on shortly after there, started playing Diablo in, I guess, 2014, and I have put a lot of time into it. I really, really like Diablo 3, or at least the current version of Diablo 3, not necessarily the original.
Yeah, so
would it be safe to say that we all do? We all currently love the way it is as of right now?
Diablo 3 now is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, just checking. Just making sure.
Yeah, that was so when I guess it was the three of us when we were doing the guesses for what was going to be at BlizzCon.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all like, "Oh yeah, Diablo 4, I could see that happening." And that was when all the news was swirling. There was legitimately a part of me that was kind of sad because I liked Diablo 3 so much, and to see it kind of die, it was like, "Well, that's." I'm excited for something new. I'm excited for more, but it would be legitimately sad to have this go away because it's still in such a healthy place.
Well, yeah, Rifts and everything else in terms of what they've done for Endgame and Paragon levels and it's just so endless.
And yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the season's on PC, and we can talk about that later. But seasons are coming to console in 2017 sometime.
Yeah.
And
just amazing. Oh.
Yeah, and the multiple activities you have for end game content, and the leaderboards being set up the way they are for greater rifts, and the amount of builds for every character that change every season because of the changes they make every season. There's a lot of good things about the Diablo 3 endgame, but the community was pretty upset about the BlizzCon announcements because it wasn't big enough. It wasn't big enough. The endgame for Diablo 3 is good, and we'll talk about it more later. But it's gotten a little stale since it hasn't changed enough in the eyes of some fans. And
about a year, right, since there's been any major overhaul, a year and a half.
I would at least a year. Because they started doing riffs for well over a year, but the stuff like the Kanai's Cube and the end game material hunting that happens in most of Diablo 3, that has been, I think that was summer of 2015 is when they rolled that out.
Sounds right. Yeah,
so a little over a year.
Because we got it a few months after you guys did.
Even more important to kind of this conversation is like everything that we've just been talking about for the last couple of minutes. None of that was there when the game came out.
That launch, no. Right.
And that so for me, like I've talked about this before. When I went to a friend's house, I tried out Diablo and Diablo 2, but like it was one of those things like it didn't really strike me. Like you didn't have enough time to spend with it. It's like whatever. I was not into PCs, and so for me, like I entered this genre with Torchlight. Torchlight's fantastic, and then Torchlight 2 came out
Huh.
And I was
Okay.
like, and so that was kind of like how I viewed these games. And Torchlight 2 was like both fantastic games. I really, really enjoyed them. And so you fast forward a little bit, and Diablo 3 comes out. Super, super hyped on my part. Like I'm ready to go with this. And you start looking, and I was like, this doesn't line up. Like, it looks great. Like I like the mood and whatnot, but
Yeah.
you could tell that the loot was kind of broken. Like there was nothing to do eventually. Like
And I
there's
should
weird
mention,
difficulty spikes.
Torchlight 1 and 2 are made by a lot of the same staff that made Diablo 1 and 2.
Yes.
And Torchlight 1, like Diablo 1, is a single town and a single dungeon where you just basically need to get to the bottom, and you choose between 3 classes. And Torchlight 2 is a lot like Diablo 2, where you travel across the countryside, chasing after one of the characters from the first game in order to quell a more world-threatening issue. And it's really, Torchlight 2 feels like Diablo 2. Torchlight 1 feels like Diablo 1. They share a lot of the same staff. There's a through line there.
Yeah.
And I think, we'll...
Except for the bright, colorful art style,
yes,
which would turn off to some people.
And a wolf
Yeah,
carrier stuff.
Yeah, Torchlight 2 has a pet that lets you carry extra inventory, which is brilliant. But Torchlight is bright and colorful and steampunky, and Diablo is much darker, much more
demonic,
gothic.
dark fantasy.
Yeah, dark fantasy, very gothic designs, lots of angels and demons and undead.
Yep.
And less super deformed than Torchlight is.
Which I loved the aesthetic of Diablo 3. I really enjoyed that, but I liked that I could make money with the auction house. But everything outside of that,
the auction house was a weird thing because when I finally started playing at launch, a few days after, day after the failed midnight launch event for me, but I didn't really get too involved in the auction house because I knew I wasn't probably going to be able to play enough to get anything of real value to sell off. I thought it was a really interesting attempt at creating an in-house economy, but I was very unsurprised at how it kind of devolved. And when Blizzard was like, oh my God, we got to figure out how to fix this, I remember just thinking, isn't that exactly what you thought was going to happen?
Yeah, maybe we should go into this a little bit more detail because the auction house doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone.
And it affected the Diablo 3 economy in several ways. And truthfully, I've never played a version of this game that had the auction house in it. So, Josh, can you explain briefly what it is for my benefit as well as the listener benefit?
It's World of Warcraft auction house, but with real money.
Oh, okay. You could sell items that you got in Diablo 3 for real money. Yeah. Is that right?
You did not say what he was asking you to say, Josh.
I answered another way that you don't know, have experience with.
And I also haven't played WoW, so I don't know what that means either.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I can't remember this part. I think you had an option to do it in not real money too, but that sounds really stupid. Why would you do that? Yeah, so you basically collected gear and you could just put it up there, and then it was removed from your inventory for a period of time until it was sold, and it was on a time loop. And if it went past that time, it went back into your inventory, and basically because there wasn't a lot of choices. Yeah, and they were taking a piece off the top, and like there's processing fees and whatnot, and it was really crappy because there wasn't a lot of items. And
it was before version 2 came out.
Yeah, and
when it closed.
I actually am beyond that. I actually made money off of it, but I'm a big fan of the auction house. I thought it was a brilliant idea. I enjoyed it in practice. Like coming from World of Warcraft, where they do have like the auction houses, it was a system that made sense to me. I would never purchase anything from the auction house because I feel like it ruins the flow or experience of the game, or at least until you got to like super end content. Then it's like I don't want to grind this out.
Yeah, and that was the complaint for most people was they felt it was taking the fun out of the game.
But I also so I'm a dad now. I have a job. Like I want to experience my games, and I just don't have the time.
Spend a couple bucks to get some good equipment that will save a lot of time for you as you run to level 60.
Right. So. As a college kid or a high school kid where I have zero job or zero money, it's like, yeah, I'm going to roll through this. I'm going to try to game this system though I make some money, possibly. If not, though, I have hundreds of hours. I mean, think of all the terrible games you play as a kid. and you did it because you just had time. You didn't know better. And
Mhm.
like now that you're an adult, you're like, no, I'm not.
Not wasting my time.
Because you're like in the back of your head, you're like, so at my work, I get paid this number of dollars an hour. So if I think about that, like I know I'm not working, but I could be making this number. So if I were to spend 3 hours grinding, really, it's like this number. And it's like, no, I'm not gonna do that.
You would rather spend a couple bucks
Yeah.
than grind 5 hours for specific items.
Yeah, and say thank you, whoever.
Right.
Secret Assassin 327, like thank you for getting me this crazy loot. Yeah, and so I never had a problem with it. I feel like going into it, an individual, if they're going to purchase something, understands how that affects their experience. If they go through and they buy all the top end gear and then start the game, like yeah, it's you kind of ruined it for yourself. But so I never got that complaint. I think fundamentally the biggest issue with the auction house was Loot 2.0 wasn't there.
Yep, and I was about to say that is that they had a terrible loot algorithm in place at launch. I remember on my first playthrough with a barbarian, I mean, you topped out at the end of Act 4 just hitting level 30, about maybe even a couple levels short on a standard playthrough, whereas now on a regular playthrough through 5 acts on, one difficulty above standard, you'll pretty much hit 70 guaranteed almost every time. So
it's
in that
easy
sense,
to
it
run to
shifted
70.
so much in terms of how you progressed. And I remember getting one legendary item
Yeah, so
my first run.
it was
Played as a barbarian, and I remember starting up on the next difficulty setting immediately, and within just a quest, I hadn't even gotten to Adria's hut in the first act again. I was like, you know what? Screw this. This game is not rewarding me for this time.
right.
There's no point.
And so
I'm going to go into the difficulty settings briefly because I think that's a major difference from old Diablo 3 to current Diablo 3.
And before you do that, that's what I was going to
Gangsta.
say too. Is beyond Loop point oh, the other big issue was as you stepped up in the difficulties, it was
There wasn't a
ginormous
boost.
spikes.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that's where
New
people
difficulty-
also felt like they were being forced to pay to progress.
Yeah, you felt like you were never getting good equipment. So with the auction house, that became the complaint. Was it felt like for the many people who, to Josh's comment before, weren't able to put in the endless hours, it almost felt like a requirement. That was the complaint that was always going around, like that you had to go to the auction house to get something to then progress.
Yeah.
Which is, to your point, now with Loot 2.0, hypothetically they could bring it back and it would be very different. I think it would be much more of the happy free market they kind of wanted it to be.
Yeah, since
Right.
then they've fixed both the difficulty and also the loot. But Mike, why
And
don't
the
you
loot.
explain
Yeah.
the changes?
Sure. So in old Diablo 3, it was a lot like Diablo 2. There was 3 main difficulties, and the level cap was 60 before the expansion, I should mention.
Just like
And-
standard Nightmare Hell, right? That was it?
Yeah, exactly. Normal, Nightmare, then
traditional.
Hell. And basically, and just estimating, you would probably get from level 1 to 30 in normal, then 30 to 50 in Nightmare, then 50 through 60 in Hell. And after that, they added a 4th difficulty that was exclusive to old Diablo 3 called Inferno, where basically you would die instantly unless you were level 60 and had top-tier equipment from Hell mode. And people were upset with Inferno because some build you needed extremely specific builds just to survive for certain seconds. The class balance was called into question because certain classes did way better than others based in Inferno. That people did not like Inferno running in Diablo 3. And another thing that I think you didn't mention, or none of us mentioned, about a problem with the auction house is that people care about those Diablo 3 leaderboards. And the idea of someone being able to progress in leaderboards by buying equipment rather than working for it was very problematic to some people. And I wasn't part of this discussion at all since I wasn't playing Diablo 3 at the time.
Yeah, I always forget about that because I don't care about the leaderboards for this.
Yeah, leaderboards they're sort of fun to follow because I mean in the modern age of gaming that we're in, you can go and look at the leaderboards, look at the top couple guys either by class or overall or groups of 4 versus solos, and then you can probably find that person's Twitch channel or YouTube channel and see how the best people do it, and that's super cool. But anyway, difficulty in old Diablo 3 was pretty linear, and you would basically export and start over again from a new difficulty once you finish the previous one. And that's how Torchlight 2 does it as well, and how Diablo 2 did it. But now there is a meter with I'm not sure what the exact number is, but maybe 20 difficulty settings.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's
because there's
normal
of Inferno, isn't it?
No, but Inferno's not around anymore. Now it's called Torment now.
Yeah.
Torment.
Now it's more than 8. I think it's normal, hard, expert, master are the regular ones, and then once you get to level 60 for the first time with any character, you can unlock Torment. And there's Torment. I think it's 1 through 13. I believe it's 13 torments, but there might be more now. I'm not certain. The character I'm running now is messing around on Torment 4 or 5 mostly, because much higher than that I can still win, but it takes a way longer time to do it. And with every level of once you get to Torment, there's gems and items that don't drop at lower difficulty settings. And with every new Torment level, enemies get much stronger, but also the drop rate for legendary items and set items increases by about 15 to 20% with each level of Torment. So difficulty in Diablo 3 is now
Torment levels, by the way.
It's 13. So 13 plus 4 or 5 is 17 or 18 difficulty levels. You can set them however you want. It's really just playing a guessing game between how easy you want to make the game, how quickly you want to be able to clear enemies, and then balancing that with the difficulty and the rewards for higher difficulty levels. And having a difficulty slider like this lets people play Diablo 3 at exactly the pace they want. If you want to just cruise through the game, you can just do the whole game on normal, and that's fine.
You're
if
fine.
You want to get challenge yourself and get better legendary items as the result, then ratchet it up. It's great. And I played this, I played a new character from scratch for this podcast. And it was fun, going through the difficulties. I started out on hard, which is the second lowest. And then once I got a couple pieces of equipment, I got up to master, and then just keep playing, get better equipment. When master starts feeling too easy, went to Torment 1, and then I just slowly climbed them as I got more and more comfortable and got better and better equipment with the character I was using and the playstyle I was using. Did you do
hardcore?
Great. I did not do hardcore. I know. I was just hardcore is stressful. I didn't want to have a stressful run.
So that's what makes it. In every video game, if there's an option that a character can die and just disappear, I turn that off.
So you played XCOM 2 on Iron Man, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Exact opposite. Yeah. So that doesn't work in my mind like that. So, because then I would need a game to literally erase all my previous saves too, because then I would just go back and play from a previous save, and you do all the saves coming in and whatnot, and it's at that point it's this is no longer enjoyable. But for some reason, hardcore mode in Diablo 3 it works in my head. I really enjoy that.
I understand the value of permadeath. I just did not need permadeath in my life this time.
It's weird. I did my hardcore run for this game, my first one and the only one, about almost half a year ago now, and I had a lot of fun doing it, but because of what we were just talking about with all the difficulty slider stuff, and you can't tweak as much in hardcore, they don't let you bounce back and forth. You can only bump up one or bump down one difficulty level from whatever you start with, so they kind of tailor it so you can't be as crazy. But to me, hardcore in Diablo 3 isn't as brutal.
It's really easy
there's
now.
no difficulty spike.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in Diablo 2, it was always, if you can get past Duriel, then you're going to be okay.
Duriel is the Act 2 boss of Diablo 2, which has 5 acts. And
Yes.
man, he is an MFer.
Yes, he is a
Sweet
weird,
Moses.
obscene spike, and unless you were amazing with town portal scumming and all the rest of it, you were going to usually get destroyed.
And
unless you over-grind it on hardcore.
And he specifically punished glass cannon builds. If you had a super tanky barbarian or crusader, you might even be able to handle Duriel the first time you meet him. But because he is basically just a super armored, annoying or charge you immediately and just whack you kind of boss, he is a lot of the time a 5-second death if you aren't expecting him and you're using a ranged class or a magic class.
So there isn't that spike this time around.
Yes, there's nothing like a Duriel in Diablo 3. Unless you set the difficulty level 1 or 2 notches too high, and then you run into a very difficult, like 2 elite packs in a row or something.
Yeah.
Then
some guy giving out charged lightning.
Yeah, that's when you'll get a surprise death. Like someone with like
Arcane and something else.
Like Arcane and Prisoner or something.
Ugh.
Yeah, that'll mess you up.
Yeah, Arcane Jail, you're just stuck.
Yeah, Jailer, that's it, right. It's I think imprison is the status, Jailer is the term. Yeah.
But that's the worst, especially if they set off one of those things right on top of you in the jail. That's happened to me. Just dreams.
Yeah. And we should maybe mention for any listeners, like I don't know if any listeners aren't familiar with Diablo and would be listening to this episode, but in the Diablo games, you're fighting a lot of demons and undead and monsters as one of 6 classes, and the monsters have all kinds of different effects and traits to them, but if you run into – there's 3 types called champions, elites, and uniques, which are basically souped up like mini-boss versions of regular monsters that can have a number of semi-random affixes to them. And some of the affixes, like one of them is Molten, where they will just be throwing extra fireballs at you in addition to whatever that monster does. One's called Arcane, where they send these spinning magic traps around the battlefield as you deal with them, and Arcane can be a pain in the rear. And Jailer is one where they will be able to fix you in place, with
these little tiny walls. It's awful.
Yeah, with these little and sometimes they'll summon walls just to lock you in.
Elites weirdly.
What's that called when they?
I think it is just Waller actually. Like
Waller, Waller and Jailer are separate.
But they're both awful. And what he's talking about, Mike's
puts you in a place that you can't move.
Those elites and corpse captains are just the worst, because for whatever reason now, with the difficulty that in terms of how the game progresses, I feel like a lot of the act bosses they can be difficult, but they're manageable. Whereas the randomization of those elites and their squads, especially if you hit 2 in the same dungeon on the second floor kind of thing, I mean, you can get destroyed and hosed because they're the right kind of debuffs against your current build and all the rest of it. It can just be so circumstantial and yet devastating.
Chris is absolutely right. It's the act bosses, which are, there's 5 acts in Diablo 3, and there's a boss at the end of each one, have set patterns, and their moves are often telegraphed pretty well, so that you can figure out what they're doing and strategize around it. The final boss of the game, Malthael, is probably the hardest of the act bosses, but even he has patterns that you can mess around. But if you run into like a champion pack and an elite pack at the same time, and they have like one of them has Jailer and then a bunch of damaging stuff, then you could the semi-randomness of that you can't really predict can really screw you. And those are the hardest parts of Diablo 3, when you run into a pack that's maybe you weren't expecting and weren't totally prepared for, and you really struggle.
Yeah,
I've had
you feel really confused.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's intense, and when you finally knock them out, it's awesome. And I've run into those a couple times in this run already, even though I've barely started going into the torment levels. But Diablo 3 is great. At its base level, it's fun to play. The characters and their movesets are fun, and with Loot 2.0 and the new endgame that they've developed since the expansion came out, just makes the loot hunting part of it and the tinkering part of it and the and the murdering demons and undead part of it just ratcheted up to 11. It's terrific.
I mean, it's near endless in terms of what the game can give you. I know that there is actually a cap, but it feels like there's always something new that you can find for yourself.
It's like an MMO that is running at top speed at all times.
Yeah, without having to do the same raid boss 12 times to get that one piece of gear.
Yeah. Maybe you just need to do a Greater Rift twice, and then you'll get 8 pieces of gear, and maybe the one you want is in those 8.
Or my favorite, which has happened to me in all 3 Diablo games, except in the first one it wasn't a set item, is just clicking on some random corpse and all of a sudden getting set gear or legendaries and being like, how did this guy die? How is he dead? He had this helmet. I don't understand. I'll take it. Great.
The first legendary piece I got in this game, and I started out at a pretty low difficulty it was either hard or master. I I was just running by and I basically tripped over a log, and the log had a legendary super
I love
crossbow in
that.
it.
I love
So
that stuff.
so it's like it's like, well, okay. Not sure how this legendary crossbow, literally called the Demon Machine, is in this log in the Highlands. Not
Someone
sure how
needed to
that
keep it
happened.
secret and safe, and it all worked out.
Yeah, people aren't supposed to step on logs. You're supposed to walk around them or over them.
No, like I'm just clicking along, just
You
moving my
shouldn't
character along, and
who
I
goes
clicked
around
on a
destroying
log.
logs? Person
See, I
knows
like
a safe
the,
spot.
the obvious storyline of the person who then comes back to find their crossbow that they hid, and they're like, "What the hell?"
No, it's one of those.
And
Oh,
all of a sudden they get surrounded. They're like, "Oh, I'm screwed."
it's just literally one of those. Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh god, they're coming.
If I don't move, they can't see me.
Yeah, that was
Random
that was the biggest thing for me. Going back to it, I've played it a lot. I played it a lot, and then I come back to it every 3-6 months. I feel like for
Yeah,
just a
same.
little bit. But usually those are just like quick check-ins. And definitely now that you kind of have adventure mode, I just like hit highlights of what I like.
Yeah, you just do your bounties,
Right.
get some stuff,
But this is
do a rift.
Yeah.
this is the first time I've sat down, started a character from one, and actually just
Oh, to do the story again.
yeah, and it still in a lot of ways feels fresh, and I think that's a testament to the game is, and this is we're talking about like the random kind of pieces that you can have of collection of like enemies that you encounter or like abilities that they have. It does feel new. It does feel different. The bosses are
Yeah.
still really easy. But the
Yeah,
moment to moment
that's
is nice.
the weaker parts.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what it comes down to, and that's why I think their adventure mode and bounties was so smart, because I really do think that this is, out of all three games, the weakest when it comes to end of act bosses. But by building the pursuit of Paragon levels and bounties to kind of be like, oh, you just need to do these 5 missions, and one of them will usually be one of the main act bosses, either the
Or
mid act or the end act.
Well, yeah.
Isn't there always one that's at least
No,
one?
not always, but
Not always?
often it'll be one of the bigger bosses in the act.
Yeah.
Okay, so not guaranteed, although I guess I've just been weirdly lucky that it's happened most of the time. But the fact that you can just kind of, like you said, Josh, kind of greatest hits it.
Yeah.
Be like, oh yeah, that fight against the Butcher is fun. Fight
Yeah.
the Butcher again.
And that it's nice to go back though and actually play through it. It feels new still. And I know that
Yeah.
sounds stupid because a lot of the games that we play here, like there's aspects of the games that still feel fresh, or like you can see what they were trying to do, but you can oftentimes
But
kind of see
Blizzard-
the age.
Blizzard is special with how they handle all of the Diablo games, but especially 2 and 3, in that they just, well, Diablo 3 from day one, but they just keep, even if it's a little thing, they just keep trying to keep tweaking, keep improving. So even if you haven't played in 6 months, you come back on, and there's probably something that you might have missed from before, because they've added so much content over the past few years.
And
Or as simple as getting gifts from friends who've been playing
Which is a
while
nice
you've been
feature.
away.
Yeah.
Which is so great, because then, like you said, you come back after 3 months, and all of a sudden you have a chance at going to a mailbox and having some friend on your friends list having earned you a legendary, and you've done nothing.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
thanks
great.
by the way, Chris,
Keep
for
going.
not sending me anything good. I get great stuff from Peter, but never from you.
Really? Is that true? Because I
Yeah.
get stuff
Yeah.
from Peter too.
Peter sends stuff to me constantly. I don't know what is
man,
going on.
Peter's just the Santa Claus of
Oh.
Diablo 3 on PS4.
I'm like
Seriously.
some of my other friends I get stuff from, but from RPG Fan, the only person I get stuff from is it's always Peter. So
Hilariously, most of the gifts I get for people are from my brother, and he hasn't turned on the game in 2 years.
that's
so
weird.
sad.
How's it even work?
And we oh shoot, I was gonna say something. Oh right, yeah, about how if you log in like season to season, something's changed a little bit every time. One thing I've noticed playing now that because I right now season 8 is going on PC, and I didn't play season 7. I was pretty deep into the season 3 through 6 range. I did a character for each of those, and then skipped 7, played 8 now. The tweaking that they do is almost never with the base kit of the character. Like the character will feel the same as it did last year. Their basic moves and even the runes on the moves won't really change much. But in the seasons, they will always change what the season goals are, which are basically achievements that give you special prizes, and they change the item sets a lot. I remember, I'm trying to think of a good example. There was a set of rings called the Wailing Host, and I think the Ring of Nightmares. I forget what the other one was, but they were these two crappy rings that you found all the time that increased your like gold find and experience level or something. But then in season 6 they changed them to two of the most powerful rings in the game that completely upended what sets you can do. I think the powers of it's called the Legacy of Nightmares now, and the Legacy of Nightmares power is if this is the only set you're equipping, then every ancient item that you have equipped gives you 100% damage bonus and 4% damage reduction.
It's just
so if you equip those
so
and then
much.
you get like 10 legendary items, that is literally multiplying your damage by 11.
So much.
And reducing your damage taken by 40, and it lets you, and you are not married to using a set strategy.
It's so pretty.
So like just by changing one item without changing any characters, they flipped the Diablo like end game pursuit of equipment on its head. And it's those kind of changes that really energize Diablo 3's Diablo 3, because they don't have to change the characters. The characters are fun already and their moves are cool already. But by changing quest design and changing a couple items, they make every new season on PC feel fresh.
Which is interesting, because that's kind of the opposite of how they fixed Diablo 2 back in the day. Because when they did the later game patches years after launch, it was about how the tech trees of characters would interact with each other.
Yeah, and
that was the big change. Whereas this time around, because they kind of have the more fluid approach of you can change on the fly instead of locked into skill choices.
Yeah, I remember when I played Diablo 2 in high school in the early 2000s, they didn't have synergies on skills.
Nope, there was none of them.
And then in the mid 2000s, they added these things called synergies, which allowed certain skills to empower other skills on your skill tree, and it completely changed how you designed your build.
And then they did another loot patch in like 2010, 2011. I mean, that game, in terms of how long they supported it, was nuts, which is why...
There was a patch in 2013 last, I think. Maybe even more recent. I just haven't checked.
Oh, God, yeah, there might be something new. But
right?
And to your point, Josh, about, we were talking about BlizzCon earlier and how you were maybe a little nervous that maybe Diablo 4 would be coming around, because while that is a cool announcement, it would take away from the fact that Diablo 2, like we've been saying, is still so great. But I got a weird feeling that we're going to be getting a lot more content for this game, even if it is tweaks more along the lines of doing something else like a season or a special events for a month or stuff like that, because we
already have special events for a month announced.
Really?
For Diablo 3.
Yeah.
For PC?
No, for every version. Well, I'm talking about the Darkening of Tristram thing. You haven't heard about this yet,
yeah,
Chris?
that's right. That is happening. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
and
that's so cool. I get to replay P1.
It's a special January event that they intend to bring back every year, but we don't need to talk about that right now.
I didn't realize those details, but that's amazing. That makes me happy. I
mind
remember
if
reading the 8 Direction thing. That makes me
Yeah. They're removing about 25% of character animations, so they look choppier, and changing from 360-degree movement to 8-directional movement.
As long as every time I get hurt, I make a weirdly noise, then I'm super satisfied.
Yeah, the Warrior's noise that he made whenever he got hit was so strange.
It was just the same 3 sounds on repeat as every fallen.
If you're using the rogue, it was like a women's tennis match. But if you're using the guy, it was like someone having the worst day in the bathroom he's ever had.
On that
but
note,
anyway, and anyway, I kind of change the subject a little bit. Can we talk about the 6 main characters of this game?
I was going to go in the direction of what characters we actually have been playing.
Right, sure.
Josh, what are you playing?
Demon Hunter.
Chris, what are you playing?
Finished a Demon Hunter that I had started a little while ago, so already on Paragon with her, and now I'm doing Wizard.
Okay, I don't know how this happened, because we definitely didn't plan it, but I'm also playing a Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
But I have played every class.
Yeah, I've played every class.
I think Mike has gotten close to, except for Crusader.
Demon Hunter is the class I've played the least by far. I got a Demon Hunter to level 70 last year sometime, but didn't do much with them. But this is the first time I'm actually taking a demon hunter into torment levels in the end game. But I have a witch doctor with over 100 hours invested, and
My monk has the most.
yeah,
time.
my witch doctor has the most, and second most is either my monk or my wizard.
Yeah. So I
Wizard.
started as a barbarian, and that's why I was doing hardcore.
Is that what you did when you got it on PC too? Was Barbarian?
Me?
Oh no, you missed
My first one on PC was a barbarian.
Look at us, we're friends.
Yep.
It just and I could have used the Crusader, but I don't know why I didn't. It probably would have been smarter. And then I was running out of time for the podcast, and I was getting a little stressed out, like we were talking about. So I took my ridiculously statted Demon Hunter, and I just blew through the game.
And had a lot of fun.
I took a demon hunter from level 1, and I think I'm actually gonna move through the end game pretty fast because I've gotten very, very lucky with my drops since I started doing end game stuff in adventure mode. I have a very nice set of builds going for me that involves Reign of Vengeance, another skill called Just Vengeance, and a set called Natalia's Vengeance. So I am just full of vengeance this time. Not sure how that happened, and it's been a lot of fun.
One of the really nice things for me has been so I originally played the game on Xbox 360, and when kind of
character swaps.
Yeah, so I had to go through all my character swap to get to the PS4. With that, some weird stuff comes and weird things don't. So like I lost my angel wings, which I was really sad about. So I always put those on my characters for the pre-order bonus.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then, so that didn't come, which I still don't understand. But all of your money, all of your items, all your characters, all those come over. But then Diablo has an internal achievement, like challenge thing. Only like half of those came over. Not like some of the stuff. Like if you were like halfway through a book challenge or whatever, then it would, like those halfway wouldn't come through. And so like you had to redo some of that, and like so then a lot of the kill so many demons with this
I went through that too, yeah.
And so I had
those didn't go through.
Yeah, unless you
had completed them. So like if you had
fully completed it,
you'd hit the 50, like do 50 of X, you have the 51. But then there's the next set of it, which is now do 100, and then after that it goes down. You have to do 200, like killing treasure goblins.
But then like the 100 wouldn't have any of the demons anymore listed.
Yeah, it would reset.
You had to technically start from scratch again.
Yeah. And can I mention my one weird achievement story for this game?
Can I finish my story?
It's okay. Go with your story first. But I have one in the wings.
And then with that, you basically turn the game on and you start the first mission when you start over, and it like a bunch of trophies pop, but they're like the weirdest trophies that are popping. And so it's been nice going through because I'm actually beating the game almost for a first time, because even when I was playing it before, I did Reaper Souls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did that, so I have all those. But in the regular game, like I don't have any to recruit the front, like your allies. I don't have any of the axe, and so even when I was going through an adventure mode, like some of the bosses would pop. So I'm almost going through and beating the game for the first time, which is kind of weird.
I'm not sure we've explained it, but adventure mode versus campaign mode is something that was changed in the expansion. Campaign mode is running through the game normally. Adventure mode is basically some of the end game stuff we've been talking about, where you get assigned bounties that let you jump anywhere into the story to get special rewards for completing special tasks, and that's where you get a lot of your end game loot and end game content in adventure mode. And adventure mode rules. It's almost like switching from story mode to arcade mode and just going completely nuts. Yeah, I love adventure mode. Like I play through campaign just to sort of go through the emotions, and then I just spend all my time in adventure mode.
Yeah. I think most people at this point, once they go through their first playthrough, they don't even go for a harder difficulty run. They just go adventure mode for the most part. Just do rifts, which are these fun little dungeons that are randomized, that you have to do bounties to get rift stones, and then you can unlock and do these cool portal things. We'll probably get into that more into the next episode. But basically, the end game is now incredible, and it feels endless, which is astounding considering where it was when the game first started, and there was no end game.
And on PC, they have these things called seasons, where every 2 or 3 months they They reset the leaderboard and allow people to start from scratch and give players special rewards.
Incentives are nuts.
Yeah. For completing achievements within a season. And
It's just great.
no, it's terrific. And one time I jumped several steps in those achievements because I had this weird glitch happen where I was the season where I was the most active, where I played a witch doctor, and I was equipping this set that weakened enemies heavily every time you hit them with a spell from a certain list of spells. And the way that I had that built was I just would throw clouds of poison and fire everywhere, and the damage over time would lower enemy defenses by like 400% or something. It was insane.
That's
But it was
fun.
but it was a lot of damage over time. But like fire and switching between fire and poison and getting bonuses for switching damage types as well. So because of the equipment I had, so I was struggling against the boss of a rift one time, and it was I was dealing damage. I was getting work done, but that my health was fluctuating.
Right.
And they ended up killing me when they were almost dead. So and in rifts, when you die, there's a timer for you to get revived back because you're trying to finish the rift within a certain time frame to get the most rewards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was ahead of the timer. Wasn't an issue, but I think there was a 10-second timer after I died. So the boss is almost dead. I have my damage over time going, and then I die. And when the clock is not back down to 0, the boss dies. So I revive. So I defeat the boss when I'm still dead, and because of that, because the way the game thinks, it didn't recognize as me having anything equipped. Yeah. So no, it recognized me killing the boss, but it gave me about 12 achievements in a row for clearing a rift without having any items equipped.
Oh.
What?
Because while I was dead, for some reason the game thought I didn't have any set items on. So
you're the spirit form, so technically you're not equipped with anything.
Yeah, exactly. So I got like 12 achievements in a row. It was like defeat a rift with no items, level 20. Defeated a rift with no items, level 25. Like a bunch of those
things you should have no right having.
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of those up to whatever rift level I was on. It was probably around 40 or so. So it was and that was part of the reason I got a bunch of rewards from that season was because I got a bunch of achievements I should not have gotten thanks to a glitch.
That's awesome.
and Diablo 3, like if you play it a good amount of time, you will have all kinds of individual stories that you have from a crazy boss you fought or a crazy rift you fought, because just the basic action of the game is so much fun, and the different things the game can throw at you are so diverse. It's awesome. I will play this game forever.
That's what I was thinking about. So a lot of times when we do these podcasts, we cover like quick overview of the gameplay, like how some of the art, a little bit of the sound, because you guys love music, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, let's talk completely story.
I was gonna say, and we haven't even talked about the 3 acts that we're supposed to, because it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like at the end of the day, there's some stuff. It's bad. You should probably try to save the world. Maybe, I don't know.
And listen to Jennifer Hale a bunch.
And then
Jennifer Hale's in this game too.
She's in everything.
And then it's like, all right, well, I figured this out, so I'm going to listen to some music. I'm going to listen to a podcast. And
this is an amazing podcast game. Yeah. For anyone who hasn't played Diablo 3, you like killing things, like getting loot, and just having fun, because you're going to have fun, and you've got other things that you want to listen to in your life, this is the game for you.
It is. I have many games that I consider podcast games where the audio is maybe not the most important thing, or I've played it enough times, I don't need to hear the audio again, even if the audio is good. Diablo 3 is at the top of that list for games I love, maybe muting or quieting a little bit and then putting on a podcast. It's terrific.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things. Everything is it's that moment-to-moment storytelling of this crazy thing happened to me. You're never going to believe this.
Yeah.
And those are ultimately like the things that you actually remember.
Yeah, this is a series where gameplay is king.
Yeah.
It is all about gameplay.
No, the reason I keep going back to it and doing endgame stuff so much in it is because just the gameplay for all 6 of the characters is diverse and fun and great.
Mm-hmm. And while I was not happy about it when it was first announced, and until I played the game, really, uh, I really think it was smart how they did the leveling system. How it's just unlocking choices instead of
Right.
putting points in and isolating you in terms of what your build was.
Yeah, in
It
Diablo,
eliminates
Diablo
the reality
2,
of Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. You would have to put in both your stats and your tech tree. And while I do miss that,
the tech tree was only in Diablo 2, but you're right.
yes, you're right, because you had to do spell books and all the rest of it to read and figure out skills that way.
It was 1996, different time.
Very different. God, the hours put in that game. But yeah, it was weird and frustrating because I liked the idea of tailoring your choices, but the freedom to switch on the fly, especially after you've played a character for 60, 80 hours, and you just get tired of doing the same thing, clearing rooms the exact same way, to have that option to just go, screw it, let's try something new. And now play with the exact same hero, and it feels like you've started from scratch just because of how you've tweaked runes. It doesn't even have to be the skills themselves. Just the runes can have such a major effect. Or you get equipment that's going to affect different skills and not the ones you normally equip, so you switch it around. It's just I thought it would be frustrating, but it's actually just the best.
It's built for
Yeah,
longevity.
it's I can hardly
exactly.
I don't know if I could ever go back to the Diablo 2 way of doing things, because
Like
if you
I
level
have my builds. I
if you
know
level
exactly.
yeah if you level up from 1 to 99 and do all of the quests that give you skill points, you end up with 110 skill points, and there's no way of refunding skills or resetting your skill tree. You are locked into what you do. So if you, I remember at the D2 Barbarian, you had a bunch of passives, and the passives were pretty strong. So, but basically, from a very early point, you had to choose what weapon to focus on.
Yep,
So
the
if
masteries. Spear
yeah,
mastery,
exactly.
sword mastery, all that stuff.
So if you had done axe mastery from the beginning, and you picked up only a bunch of swords in the end game, then you were screwed a little bit because you had planned to only use axes.
Yep.
And that's just a small example, but there's a zillion others I could do. But in Diablo 3, you just as you mentioned before, you only unlock skills instead of permanently putting points into things. So you can just tweak your build, tweak your skills at any time, and everything is unlocked once you hit 70. And so if you haven't, I mean, I'll use my Demon Hunter as an example. I've been using a Reign of Vengeance build. If I suddenly get a couple items that give me a bunch of bonuses to, say, multi-shot, then just by switching my equipment around and changing skills around and tinkering for 5 minutes,
You're optimized.
I can switch to a multi-shot build. And maybe the most difficult part of it is, I don't know, resetting my rings or gems. And every character has about 30 skills, I think, plus another 30 separate passives that you can equip. So, and each skill has 5 runes. So each skill has 5 different settings that you can change that totally change the skill. Like the Witch Doctor's Piranha skill has you summon a pool of piranhas to attack an enemy, and one rune on the skill has it weaken the enemy's defenses. Another one has it slow all enemies. Another one changes the piranhas to a lagoon of crocodiles attacking for physical damage. Yeah, the crocodile rune is pretty great. And so every skill in the game has those 5 variations, and and you can equip 6 skills at a time. So picking 6 skills, 5 variations on every skill, 4 passives from a list of about 20 or 30. I don't remember exactly what they are. And equipment, just how many equipment slots are there? 15, maybe 12.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
So like there's 6 major ones, then 2 for your weapon, then 3 jewelries, 11, and a couple
12.
more. I think it's around 12 to 15. Yeah, between 12 and 15 item slots. And sweet Moses, there is so much customization.
There's just so much choice, so many permutations, and
there's set items too. Each class has 4 sets that are 4 sets of 6 items each that are designed around a specific play style. Yeah. So they give you basically 4 end game ready play styles for each one that you can work towards, or you can do a ton of variation outside that, like with the Legacy of Nightmares set that I mentioned before, which is sometimes called the setlist set, because you can't use one of those
Other sets, yeah.
one of those other sets with the Legacy of Nightmares. There is so much variety and customization in Diablo 3, and it changes with every season when they tweak the item sets every season. It is wild. The game is so much fun at the base level, has a rich landscape of endgame content, and is changed by Blizzard to keep it fresh every 3-ish months. It is. I will play Diablo 3 forever. I love this.
And
game.
we didn't even mention everything with your smith, your gem crafter, and
customizing items with your 3 campaign caravan followers.
Yeah, what is their official term? I can never remember what
there's 6 followers in the game.
No.
Artisans.
Artisans, right? Yeah. There's 6 followers in the game, and 3 of them accompany you in combat. You choose between which of the 3 is with you at all times. One of them is voiced by Troy Baker, who is another guy that's around everywhere.
Yes, he is.
And then 3 of them are artisans that stay in camp and will help you tweak your items around. And man, there's so much stuff in this game.
Yeah, and
I'm going to lose my voice talking about it.
No, but it's all of it's optimization. Even though they made mistakes early on, they then figured it out and they made it better. And a lot of the stuff that, like I said, as an old fan, had me upset when I would read about it before launch. Once I actually played the game, I realized, oh no, these were the right changes to make. Like, they definitely knew what they were doing. And stuff like your companions is a great example. They basically took the mercenaries from Diablo 2, which were in certain acts after certain events, or right away you could hire specific types of mercenaries depending on the act.
Every act except 4 had a mercenary.
Except for 4, correct. And they all had their own different play styles. They would have certain skills, and they would level up with you. And if they died, you could resurrect them.
And, sometimes it got weird because
more expensive it would get. Sorry, go.
No, it's cool. But it got weird with those mercenaries in Diablo 2 because their skills changed depending on what the difficulty setting was when you recruited them.
Yes.
And so, like the one that the Nightmare was the middle difficulty setting, and the most popular mercenary for high end stuff was an Act 2 Nightmare difficulty mercenary because he had a good aura that would sit. But it was weird and ultra specific and stupid.
And that's the thing, is that it was a nice mechanic. It was new, especially in comparison to Diablo 1, like so much was. But it could be its own huge ass pain, especially if you were low on funds and sometimes your mercenary would die because of bad AI. And to resurrect them, it could, especially later on. And if they died before a bunch, it cost tons of money. And they basically went, yeah, that's dumb. Here are companions. They're kind of going to have a little plot line that you can discover if you want to keep talking to them. And they're going to function the exact same way, and it's not going to cost you money. Go have fun. It's like, great. You basically took all the negative out of what was there before and made this better for me.
So for
you have all 3 of them. I'm sorry, you have all 3 of them by the beginning of Act 2, and it's great.
End of Act 2. Well, I guess she comes in midway.
No,
so
she comes in the very first quest in Act 2.
Is that first quest?
Yeah, it's right away.
It's when you're walking to the town.
Because it's when you're walking there. Yeah, I always feel like it's later. Right, it's right at the beginning.
I think you need maybe this one more quest before she joins permanently. But
it's first foray into the sands.
Mm-hmm. So it's the companion system in D3 is in Diablo 3 is way better than in Diablo 2. Whoops.
See, so as somebody that didn't know about the mercenary system, how I always viewed it is, you look at all the backlash of like always online and whatnot, and people are talking about like, I don't want to play with other people or this or that. I viewed it as a way that allowed individuals to play solo.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And we haven't really touched on it, and I tried to set this up with Chris. It just hasn't worked out. This game really, really shines when you get to play with other people.
Yeah, and that's on me. It's my schedule, not Josh. Josh is a good person.
I try.
And famously, whenever multiple people join the same game, the enemies get slightly stronger, but the experience rewards also get slightly stronger. Right. Yeah. So what's the phrase with Diablo 2? It's like Diablo's minions grow stronger or something. Yeah. Whenever that was the message.
A new champion has arrived, and Diablo's minions grow stronger.
Right.
It would always be that music.
I always viewed those, and then they leave when you have somebody join your game, which again kind of it adds to that concept of it. But it makes you just less lonely. And
yes.
You can do kind of crazier builds. where you're kind of more of that glass cannon, and if you have, um, I'm
Cormac
forgetting.
the Templar.
Yeah, the Templar. All of a sudden, it's like,
Cormac
all
the
right, well,
Templar.
now I kind of sort of have a tank. He doesn't necessarily do the right tanky thing sometimes, but can kind of fill that
But
role, and
you
it
got
just
someone to take focus while you focus on your range or
right.
do your thing damage.
Yeah,
And
they'll,
so
they'll never do it. They'll never do a ton of damage, but the Templar can stun people and shove them around. The Scoundrel can put some weaknesses on enemies with his arrows, and the Enchantress like confuses and transforms enemies. They're a positive addition, definitely.
and that's kind of, and it sounds like we've kind of spun around this concept like the whole time we've been talking, but Blizzard did a very good job of thinking of more or less every way you could play the game, where the game could possibly break, or the experience could be less fun, and they came up with some sort of clever solution to kind of get around it. And so,
Yep.
whether or not I'm playing with other people, whether I'm playing by myself, whether I want to have a really boring just click 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 character, I want to have like control a bunch of things. Like there's different ways you can go about it, and whereas a lot of games, like we kind of talked about this with Deus Ex, like if you had an individual that was stealthy, at some point the game just broke because you were supposed to shoot things.
Yeah.
That never happens in Diablo. Things just continue to work out, and you can go at it all these different crazy permutations like we were talking about, and technically all of them work to a certain extent.
Yeah, and one thing actually that I love when you play with another human character is this wasn't the case in, I don't know, well, definitely don't know early on in Diablo 3, but with Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, this definitely wasn't the case. If you have a friend who, let's say, is just starting Diablo 3 and he wants to play with you, but you only have a level 70 Paragon character, you can actually have the two of them play together, and depending on who's the host, the other character will scale to their level.
You're also going to power level the crap out of that dude.
So that's the thing. If you want to power level someone to catch up, you could just basically carry someone, and they're going to feel kind of ineffective, but they're not going to die like they should be for being level 20 doing endgame stuff. Like, again, I think you nailed it, Josh, when you say they really built a game for everyone.
Yeah.
But usually when people make a game for everyone, it crumbles because no one's happy. Weirdly, Blizzard is the one company that makes it work with everything.
Well, I mean, most of the time, yes, Blizzard is great at designing games for many types of gamers, but somehow the most hardcore ones always find a reason to get salty about something.
Always, exactly.
Yeah, and again, the Diablo 3 community was a little bit annoyed that there wasn't more Diablo 3 stuff announced at BlizzCon, to which I would call them a bunch of entitled rats because they're getting a new class next year, and
I know.
and the Darkening of Tristram looks amazing.
Yes, it does.
Wait,
Yes,
But-
it does.
So I was on that BlizzCon episode with you.
Correct.
Does
I was
does
also mentioned
that-
on that.
mean that I'm an
Go ahead.
entitled brat when it comes to Hearthstone?
I'm not going to answer that. I don't really know about Hearthstone.
Since I
But I'll-
complained for like 20 minutes?
No
but
comments
I'm-
from the jury?
I mean, I think we actually, you actually decided my nickname was Entitled Mike on that episode because I was disappointed that there was no expansion announced for Diablo
Yeah,
3.
you're entitled Mike and I was Caustic Curry.
I thought you were Jolly Josh.
Oh, Jolly Josh. Was I actually happy for once?
Yeah, no, you were. Well, no, we decided that you were happy. I called you my caustic co-host when I posted a tweet
No,
about
you
it.
called me Caustic Comrade. Much better.
Okay, my
Caustic
bad.
Curry
My bad.
sounds like the next best
That was it.
Xseed downloadable game.
Caustic is a terrific
Shit, we
adjective, guys.
Yeah, it is.
I was so
Totally.
happy. That brought a huge smile on my face when I saw it the first time.
Also, like the best high school Twitter handle.
Yeah,
I found
so-
a
so
really
anyway,
good Twitter handle today. I don't know if that's the best one.
Well, anyway, back to the topic at hand. The fan base will always find a reason to be upset or disappointed, but especially since they haven't charged for any new content since the last expansion, Blizzard's done extremely well by designing Diablo 3 for the masses and keeping gamers of every type happy. I love this thing. I can't wait to see it continue to grow.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So-
I'm sure that we're gonna get Diablo 4 in a decade, so we got time.
I still try to I'd like to wrap this back towards like our actual playthroughs now, or kind of like
Oh, sure.
experiences for the
Sure,
first three. So all of us are playing the Demon Hunter. I
Correct.
guess the other big
I guess now
question,
Wizard as well.
since we're talking about the first three acts, what are our favorite moments? I guess probably specifically with the boss battles. Like, what are our favorite boss battles, or what are our
Or
least favorite?
maybe there's a plot moment you love too. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
mention that.
Yeah.
I love all the cutscenes that are animated because Blizzard goes all out, and it just looks always amazing. And it's always upsetting when you get the interstitial cutscenes of just the drawings, because I wish they had just spent more money to make everything super pretty.
Blizzard
in
is
terms
great at cutscenes.
Oh, they're so good. StarCraft and yeah, just great, great. But bosses and game moments. I mean, story-wise, it's so predictable for the most part, and I think people who even don't know the story of Diablo will see a lot of the turns coming. I like that they brought back a lot of Diablo history with the bosses, but
they deliberately had Leoric and Butcher be major
Act
bosses
1.
in Act 1 because they were bosses in the original Diablo.
just
and Act
back.
and Act 1 takes place in part in that very cathedral Diablo 1 was in.
So I like aesthetically how they did a lot of that, but unfortunately I think a lot of the voice acting for most of everyone in this game is pretty bad. So it's weird having the Skeleton King talk and sound like the biggest cartoon villain in the world. But I love Act 1 because it's Tristram. And just like even in Diablo 2, when you would go visit old Tristram, when they have the music cues and like they're going to do for the event in January, it's one of my first major, like it was the first mature game I played outside of Wolfenstein 3D as a kid on PC. So the series and Act 1 is always the most fun for me because it's Tristram.
For me, my favorite of the first three acts is also the first act, both for the reasons that Chris mentioned, and because I just like the look of it. Like you go from this cathedral to sort of a haunted forested area to these to a greener highlands area. That and all of it, I think the environments look great in Act 1. And Act 2 is mostly desert, but the best part of Act 2 is in the Oasis section, in my opinion. But there's a lot of desert and wasteland and sewers that are environments I don't love. And Act 3 is a bunch of battlefields and narrow corridors and forts. And so Act 1 is the most fun to me to just walk around in. But my favorite plot moment in the game is probably from one of the Act 3 bosses, Sidea, the one you fight right before the Act boss Asmodan, because you see her crawling around in the background.
Hanging upside down.
Hanging upside down. She's a large spidery demoness, and she's taunting you and telling you what she's gonna do to you, and about how Asmodan's her master and he's the best or something. And it's very effective. And when you finally fight her, she's not very challenging because I mean none of it. Maybe I've just played this game so much that none of it feels challenging.
No, but it's what we talked about earlier. Just difficulty's not there for those bosses.
Yeah, but in older Diablo games, the boss would just appear, and they would maybe say a couple things, and then it would be a slugfest. But in Diablo 3, they set up the bosses a little more. They give them more personality. Even the ones that don't have much personality are at least visually interesting and have mechanics to them. But I thought the way they set up Sidea as a boss was real good, even if the boss fight itself isn't that memorable.
Actually, Josh, before you get a chance to say your favorite moment, I will say playing through Diablo 3 the first time, when there was the mid-boss fight transformation against Belial.
Oh, damn.
Damn it, did I take it from you? All right, go.
No,
I'm not going to finish my thought.
No. You probably have a better thought than me, so go ahead.
It's a cool boss fight, man.
They had never done that in the series, that kind of just cutscene break, and now it's final form. Like Mike had just said, every boss in Diablo 1 was like the Butcher. Famously, you would open a door to a room that if you played before, you knew was clearly where he would be, and all he would say is fresh meat, and you had to kill him or run like hell.
And he would just charge at you and hack at you.
Yeah,
but
everyone had like a line cue once you saw them that was like, now they're going to hunt you. Go have fun. Whereas having a moment where there was a transformation and now there's another boss form, it totally took me
It was a very Dragon Quest move that Diablo
Yeah.
made.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to put it.
But and also just comparing the two butchers, the butcher in the second floor of the dungeon in Diablo 1. Oh, if you for the listeners that may or maybe don't know, Diablo 1 was just a 16-floor dungeon with Diablo, the final boss, at the bottom. But the butcher in Diablo 1 on the second floor of the dungeon just charges you and starts hacking you with a giant cleaver, and that's the whole gist of the boss battle. You either had to out tank him and out damage him, or run away and like hide in a room where he couldn't reach you, and then shoot arrows at him or
shoot
something.
arrows at him.
Yeah. Lock yourself in a jail cell and then shoot arrows at him until he
couldn't
dies.
open doors. So you just shoot
Yeah.
but
But the butcher, that's the Act 1 boss in Diablo 3. He's on a giant sort of a grate with a furnace going underneath, and he can make different parts of the room just can be engulfed in flames. He can throw a chain at you to drag you towards him. He does charges that will stun you, and he's even though he's not that challenging if you're experienced at the game, but there's a lot more to the boss fight in his Diablo 3 version than his Diablo 1 version, and that might have something to do that the two games were made 15 years apart.
Probably, just possibly.
Maybe. That's my theory, at least.
You know what? I think it's a safe one.
Now I know that when we do these like ordered responses, I should probably go first because a lot of mine was taken.
We're just too insightful.
One that wasn't mentioned was the Skeleton King. The nice thing about that is it's the first real boss, and he's kind of baller sitting on his throne when you walk in. Super. Well, in all fairness, I honestly feel like all the bosses are way too easy.
Yes, they are.
But the Skeleton King, like, it was just like one of those like, all right, and we've like
What's the
officially
first
gotten
big
through the
build-up?
tutorial. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Butcher was huge for me just because I knew the legacy and what he meant.
Yeah.
And then, like Mike just explained, with the changing of the fire, it kind of reminded me of when WoW started getting really good with their boss fights, where you had to both think of how you had to implement damage and like the ordering and how you're going to, as a team, like fight, but also you had to strongly focus on positioning, because you were in maps that were going to do damage, or you had to get to a certain place because you're going to die. And the fire doesn't really, for the most part, doesn't kill you unless you're really terrible. But it's just one of those things that, like, you just had to be cognizant of it, which I enjoy.
Right.
And then, yeah, the final one, like, boss is wild just because, again, it was like, oh, this is really easy, this isn't a surprise. And then he changed to something else, like, this is really cool now. Like, I really, like, that was a moment that I was excited to come back to this time around, and it didn't disappoint again. And then story-wise, which we didn't talk about, I was surprised when I brought this up. Like, you're aware of like this mythical figure that is Deckard Cain, and then for him to actually die. We kind of talk about like the story. It's almost non-existent, but that's one of those things like that's huge. And like,
that is huge, especially for the lore.
Yeah, and even somebody at the time when I first started playing Diablo, like I knew like this is a big deal. Like people are going to be probably really upset about this.
And it
Just to
happens
show how
pretty
much
early.
we played this game because we didn't talk about it
Yeah.
before.
It's right around the midpoint of Act 1. It happens pretty early.
Pretty early.
And that was like looking back on it, like you kind of look at Butcher, you look at Deckard Cain, and some of those choices very early on to be like smack you in the face that this is not Diablo 2. Things have changed.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily beholden to some of like what we've done in the past. But yeah, those are like my kind of big ones. My favorite zone, like my favorite act, though, is 3.
My favorite acts
first
are
three or
1
the
and
total.
Of the first 3.
Okay, yeah.
Just check.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I really like the snow. I like the fortress and kind of running on top of the fortress.
I will say
And
again,
also
first
it's-
time with all the people fighting down below as you're going through the battlements. That was a super cool moment. First
And
time.
also, it's pretty cool that Act 3 takes place in the same area that was Act 5 in Diablo 2.
Diablo 2.
So there's
really?
it's not exactly 1-to-1 because Diablo 2
Technically farther up the mountain.
is technically further up the mountain, and where you fight Azmodan is going through the area at Core where the final battle in Diablo 2 was, and a lot of the snowy areas are in the same general place, but Act 3 looks cooler in Diablo 3 than because in Act 5 of Diablo 2, it's a lot of sort of empty, rocky wastelands until you get into some ice caves.
Yeah.
It
I
looks better in D3.
think
Diablo 3. Damn
it
it.
was probably because Diablo 3 was made after Diablo 2.
Okay. All right. How strongly do you feel about that? Because I'm wavering right now.
I mean, I could be convinced otherwise, but I just...
To Mike's defense, the fifth act in Diablo 2 was very samey in comparison to the diversity of visuals in the other acts, you monster.
Chris is
Leave
correct.
the man alone.
Except for Act 4 of Diablo 2 was also really samey.
Now, the area with Kanai's Cube, which is straight up Act 5 of Diablo 2.
Yeah, it's located in Act 3, but it's a side area.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't going to touch on Kanai's Cube, and I wasn't going to touch on Whimsyshire. So
we can talk about that for the next
Act 3,
episode.
I just wanted to mention it.
We're already over an hour.
Yeah, I was going to do that stuff next episode because you technically have to go to like Act 4 to be able to get some stuff, even though you're in Act 1 to go to Whimsyshire, which is so cool.
Whimsyshire is great.
Can I talk about the big plot moment that... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No, that's all I was going to say. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful.
I'm more interested in what to think of, like, what do you think is a big plot moment?
What happens right at the end of Act 3?
Yes, indeed.
Because
talking about someone dying.
Yeah, well, let's run it back a little bit. In Diablo 2, you fight. The big plot of Diablo is that there's seven giant demons that have been fighting each other and fighting the realm of the angels for supremacy. Sanctuary is the name of the planet that's in between the heavens and the hells where the humans live. And you kill 5 of the 7 demons in Diablo 2. And you kill them by sealing their souls in stones and then smashing them with a magic hammer on a magic forge. And so those 5 demons are supposedly gone for good. And Diablo is one of the 5. And then so in Diablo 3, you kill the remaining 2, Belial and Asmodan, and seal them into something called a Black Soul Stone, which is this weird artifact that can either give someone great power or it can be used to seal the souls of demons. So basically, Adria, who was a minor character in Diablo 1 who sold you spells.
That was it.
Has a daughter named Leah who is with you for most of Diablo 3, and then reveals at the end of Act 3 that Adria had been serving Diablo the whole time, that Leah is technically Diablo's daughter since Adria had sex with one of the main characters.
The hero of Diablo 1, whoever wins, the Wanderer.
Yeah, the warrior from Diablo 1 who had Diablo's soul stuck trapped inside him at the time. And so Leah is full of Diablo's dark energy, and then Adria uses that soul stone to which she made Leah train with it to learn how to use it, and then uses the soul stone to turn Leah into a new incarnation of Diablo. With
all 7, both the 3 prime evils and the 4 lesser evils,
with all 7 demon powers into Diablo, and also this new version of Diablo or Shiablo or Liablo or whatever you want to call it has a different silhouette than the old Diablo. The old Diablo had very broad shoulders and was a little bit more pharaoh looking, while this one is more humanoid and has slightly feminine like hips and body type. And
then it has more of the spindly arm things.
Yeah, more spindly arms and is more upright and less sort of
alien.
Yeah, kind of like the xenomorph alien. Yeah, that's a good reference. So so the new, realizing that Adria had betrayed you all along and transforming Leah, who is this innocent student of magic, and transforming her into the new version of Diablo was pretty cool.
It is. Especially because it was again, talking about the callbacks that we mentioned about Act 1.
Yeah,
and Tristram is everyone else from the original Diablo, whether it be Pippin the healer, Ogden the tavern guy, everyone's dead. You get a couple journals throughout the game, little entries for some of the
only one that survives
Jillian, the barmaid. You get I think you can find a couple books of Jillian, but she's dead. But
Griswold the Smith is a zombie in Diablo 2, and you can fight him
to kill him.
But there's a couple items named after him, And
Yes.
but the only survivors from Diablo, and also the three main characters of Diablo 2, the warrior, the rogue, and the sorcerer, are bosses in the three main characters of Diablo 1 are
Yes.
bosses in Diablo 2. They all become corrupted by demons, and you have to kill them. But so the only survivors were Deckard Cain and Adria the witch, and Cain's dead, and
then
Adria
Adria shows
was
back up in
was a-
Diablo 3.
Yeah, she
And
shows up,
super
and she was a servant of Diablo the whole time.
Yeah. It's great. It's just
It's cool.
such
Yeah,
fan
it's
service.
I mean, the story, like as you move through it, isn't that compelling or unpredictable. But I mean,
Yeah. They
having
tried a lot more to have story in this version of Diablo than the other two.
yeah,
And it unfortunately did not do it any favors.
but
I thought it was fun.
Whatever. It's
no,
fine. That's the
it's
thing.
fine, and the callbacks are cool, but I don't think this
It's such a
of
shoulder
Diablo
shrug.
3 as a game with a terrific story. It's
Well,
fun,
there.
it's fine,
It's
but it's not
serviceable.
great.
But
And then-
so the thing is, at the end of the day, though, like this is made for replayability. If there was cutscenes that came or like heavy, like one of the most annoying things, and I've had this because I was going through with my crazy demon hunter, is destroying a boss before he can complete his conversation and what he's supposed to summon to like there's stuff
I know
that's
exactly what you
scripted
mean.
to do,
Yep.
and so you're sitting there like, all right, well you're dead, so you're gonna disappear, and then you see the things start to like form on the ground, and you kill them before they even form. And it's like, this is really awkward. Yeah, and you're sitting there just like waiting, and so the game is built to be streamlined, to not have those kind of interruptions, so you can enjoy the best parts of the game, which is the gameplay. So I granted I did not play the other games, and so I don't know the changes, but I felt like this was the right amount of story.
No, I'm with you. It's just that it's hilarious because there is much more story this time around than in previous incarnations.
Yeah,
Normally, before you talk to someone about a quest that you just got, or about gossip. That's it, and then you would get a quest from someone and have a giant monologue about what you got to go do. That's it. That was it.
and also I think in Diablo 2 there's maybe 3 or 4 side quests per act, but in
Mhm.
Diablo 3 you can run into a dozen.
Many different random quests.
Yeah, each act, and it's great. But the one thing in Diablo 3's story because it's good about callbacks, as Chris and I both went into detail on, we only know. I mentioned that we learned the fates of the first 3 Diablo 1 heroes in Diablo 2, but we only hear about 2 of them in Diablo 3. And
We run into the necromancer.
no, you don't. You run into his student.
Is it officially a student? And I didn't realize
He
that?
mentioned
Yeah,
that
they
his
say
master.
that.
He mentioned that his master was one of the heroes that slew
Wow.
Bale.
Totally
and,
skipped over that line.
And also, we're pretty sure that they're adding necromancer classes in 2017 to Diablo 3. We're pretty sure that those are 2 other students of the Diablo.
That would
2
make sense,
necromancer.
especially if you can be a female version.
Yeah. But we in Act 5 you meet the ghost of the sorceress if you play as the wizard.
Oh.
So she's
interesting.
dead. Her name's
Cool.
Isendra, and she's dead.
Thank you for her name. I love that.
Yep. Oh, and also the Diablo 2 necromancer is named Zool, based on his Heroes of the Storm character model.
I didn't know that.
See, I warned everybody at the beginning of the podcast that Mike.
Yeah, no, I can talk about-
Go off.
I can talk about Diablo forever. It's
See, it's weird because I can quote random things of Diablo 1. I just don't have the random lore that you get.
And I haven't read any of the Diablo novelizations, and there are novels
There's a
about
bunch, yeah.
Diablo. There's a bunch, but there's in general, Diablo 2 and 3 both have a ton of lore from just items that you
Yes.
can pick up, and I've read and remember a lot of them, but it's the story. I don't think there's a ton of story that's awesome in Diablo 3, but the Diablo series as a whole has a lot of really cool lore.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of lore.
It's the
I
atmosphere.
devour a lot of it.
It's so
Yep.
fantastic around it.
Yeah.
And we talked about the art style. I actually do dig it. That was one of the many things that leading up to the game people were upset about. Thought it was too cartoony, but I think the art style is great, especially with the obscene amount of gore that it's paired with.
Well, the
So that
best
even if you think someone's a little too cartoony, and then you cut it in half, and all of a sudden everything is just blood, you're like, okay.
the best part for
You
me
earned
was I was coming from Torchlight, and I was like, "Oh, it's so cartoony." I was like, "Really?
Yeah, I know. That is the interesting part.
That
Is you
doesn't seem cartoony at all to me."
Because also early on, when people were upset with Diablo 3, all the forums would just be like, "Just play Torchlight 2. It's what you really want." And now no one plays
Torchlight,
that
yeah,
game.
yeah. Torchlight 2 is more similar to Diablo 2 gameplay wise than Diablo 3 is, but Diablo 3 is just
It's
they
just a better
take
game.
yeah they take
Now,
the moment to moment action and the loot design
Yes,
and
now.
quest design to a total another level. Like I don't need to play Diablo 2 ever again because if I want to play Diablo 2 again, I'll play Torchlight 2. But I would rather play more Diablo 3 than Torchlight 2. And I should say I love Torchlight 2, but Diablo 3 is just next level great
Yeah,
as a loot action RPG.
for the
just
record, if
that
you
one
had
game.
talked about Torchlight 2 being T2, we could have talked about Terminator 2 for a while, so I'm kind of disappointed
Sure.
in you now.
Now, well, or I could call
So-
it TL2. Or
Then we could have wrapped. We could started the show with Mighty Ducks and ended with Terminator, and that would have been fantastic.
that would have been unbelievably cool to like 1993 me.
Yeah, right.
I was gonna say maybe it's like, did one of the Mighty Ducks release dates line up with Judgment Day and the Terminator timeline? Because that would be amazing.
Oh, I don't.
that
I'm not
that
totally
D3 brings around the end of the world. That's really the subplot that we need to.
It was a knuckle puck.
It was a knuckle puck.
Well,
starts
for
the
both
Terminator
franchises,
invasion.
for both
rise
franchises,
of
the
the
second
machine.
one was the most fun, and the third one was a bit disappointing.
I still have never seen the third Mighty Ducks film. Don't know if I
No.
have to though.
They go to college, and there's a bunch of coach drama,
Of course.
and yeah, Julie the cat is a Type A personality, straight A student.
Of course.
I love
Of course.
I remember the movie, but I don't remember that well.
Josh,
Josh is just impressed.
Yeah, my guys, my memory is a little bit weird with details of games I've played and movies I've seen. You should know this by now.
I purposely, I think,
Yep.
forced that out of my brain.
I remember things I don't necessarily want to remember, and I would be
Nice.
I would be taking like a fluid mechanics class in college, and I can't remember every equation perfectly, but I definitely remember Julie the cat's role in the Mighty Ducks 3 movie.
Isn't that the worst when you're in the conversation and you're trying to remember some very important piece of like World War One history, super nuanced, and you can't, and yet you remember like the weird hairstyles of a Final Fantasy 13 game and every outfit and detail and every boss. And you're like, you know what? Sometimes I wish my memory was more selective about the things outside of the game space. But no.
If we're talking about games and ruining history, the worst is when you're in a history class and you're trying to remember something about a world war, and all you can think of is resistance history. You're like, crap, was that actually real?
Guys,
Did they make that part up?
guys, the Chimera invasion was crucial in defining global politics going forward after the 1950s.
Should
I wonder how.
should I
wonder
bring
my
that up?
comparative
Will my
religion
teacher be
professor-
upset?
How amazing would that be if the teacher was like, well, actually, if you remember Joseph's journey on the river, and you're like, yes, best friend forever.
You got to make sure if you're taking a test on Dante's Divine Comedy, not to mix up his version of Hell's with Diablo's version of Hell, because it's not exactly the same.
Oh, really? Well, interesting. Maybe they should do that for an event, though. Do every level in the dungeon as a different layer.
Oh, one of the different nine
yeah.
circles,
Yeah, do a different circle and really go all out with it. So make a
and
bet
have the
that
final
Dante's
boss be Satan and the 4 betrayers in the 9th circle.
Yeah, in the teeth. Yeah, that'd be
Mhm.
great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kill
So now that we've gone
It's Judas, Cassius,
fully,
and never mind. Sorry,
fully off the rails, I think
we are
that's,
on a different train.
that is the ultimate indication that we need to cut this. So like I said at the beginning of the show, we'll get into a lot of we've hinted at a lot of the end game stuff and a lot of cool stuff that you can find in the game. We'll obviously talk about in the next podcast. We'll wrap up this game, so we'll figure out if we can actually beat Diablo. Spoiler: there's a decent chance we probably can. But yeah, we'll get to all that in the next episode. In the meantime, December's rolling around, so we're going to. We actually decided right before the podcast. One of the
We're
games
recording
we're
this in
gonna be playing-
November, but this episode is going to come out in December.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I always choose to just ignore the time difference. So it's good that you mentioned that. We decided right before the podcast that one of the games we'll be covering in December will be Rogue Legacy.
Because it's awesome.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
But there's probably just going to be one episode on Rogue Legacy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so we're going to do one episode for Rogue Legacy. There's going to be a second roguelike that we are going to cover. We have not decided. We'll have more
Figuring it
news
out,
for
yeah.
that when we record the second episode of Diablo. So we'll just leave you waiting, hoping that it's something that you want. Yeah, if between this being posted, even though we record the second one before this, you can actually reach out to us on Twitter or on the boards at rpgfan.com or to the email of retro@rpgfan.com. You might be able to sway the decision. It's possible. If not, we love hearing from you anyways, so please reach out to us.
Yes, please.
But I think that's going to do it for us for now. Mike, could you close the show with a random Diablo fact, please?
Sure. Okay.
I got you covered.
Okay.
Right. I was thinking, I'm trying to think of all the voice lines when you clicked on characters in Diablo 1. Adria was, I sense a soul in search of answers. Pippin the Healer was, what ails you, my friend? Ogden would say, welcome, friend, I think? Oh, no, it was a greetings, master. Welcome to the Tavern of the Rising Sun. Griswold was, well, what can I do for you?
What can I do for you?
Well, what can I do for you? Yeah, I sense a soul in search of answers. God, I remember all the cadences. It's so crazy how much is in my head. But I can't remember what Jillian says.
Screw Jillian. Hit us with the Decker cane. Come on.
Hello, my friends. Stay a while and listen. That's my best attempt at Deckard. It's so bad.
The podcast will never get better than that, so we're
Never
going
get better.
to end there. Thank you very much for listening.
Oh,
Please join us
God.
for the second episode of
To
Diablo
every
3.
casting director, that is not a good example of my voice.
Here's my Diablo 3 fact. One of the Witch Doctor sets lets you turn into an exploding chicken that gets stronger with every explosion.
Good night, Wisconsin.